Forum.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Your Health Matters here on Kaieteur Radio. I'm your host, Rehanna Ramsay, and today I have with me, who's joining me virtually, Dr. Leslie Ramsay, former Minister of Health and Special Advisor to the current Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony. He is currently out in the fields along with the other hardworking staff taking the immunization COVID-19 vaccine campaign to literally all the regions of Guyana. Dr. Ramsay, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, I can hear you.
I must apologize for the delayed start because we had a bit of difficulty with our technical stuff here.
No worries.
Thank you so much. I know you're very, very busy. Welcome to the program, first of all. I'm not sure if this is your first time here with us on Your Health Matters on Kaieteur Radio, but
it is.
Okay, well, in that case, a warm welcome to you and to all our listeners again. We just want you to, we know that you have a tight schedule and a lot of work that you're doing. So we did a show before on the COVID-19 immunization. So this is basically a follow-up. So we just want you to tell us what's happening, what's the status as it relates to persons being immunized and vaccinated.
Okay, we are in all 10 regions of the country, in every community, in fact. And so I expect that by the end of today, we should have administered more than 125,000 doses, first doses. We are also going to exceed today more than 2,500 second doses. Because the second doses are now beginning to be administered, since the period between doses is now becoming time for them to have their second dose.
Okay.
So in total, when we add the number of doses administered as a first dose, and we add the number that was administered as second dose, we are approaching 130,000 throughout the country.
That's
Region 4 has exceeded 50,000, and Region 6 has exceeded 20,000. And I expect sometime within today or tomorrow that Region 3 will also complete 20,000.
That's quite some impressive numbers. But there's still some concern about the safety of the vaccine because there's some skepticism out there. Could you just repeat from your point of view as a health official how safe these vaccines are?
Let me repeat what we have said, what public health experts across the world have said. Vaccines are about the safest medicine anyone can take. The COVID-19 vaccines are not different from any other vaccines that we have taken over the years. Vaccines are very safe. COVID-19 vaccines are very safe. If there is anybody who should not be skeptical about vaccines, it's the Guyanese population. Every child, I know you, Rehanna, you are young enough
Yes.
that I know that you have had at least 16 different vaccines.
Yes.
You may not realize that, but every child in this country before they are 5 years old has had between 16 and 18 vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
The vaccines have kept our children safe. You have not seen any polio. Your generation don't know what polio is. You have never seen one. My generation did. Because vaccines eliminated polio from this country and throughout the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Smallpox, measles, mumps are all diseases that vaccines have helped us to eliminate from our country. So we are used to the last decade, we have administered more than 10 million doses of vaccine to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And so we shouldn't be skeptical. But having said that, we have had, as I said before, close to 130,000 doses of vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine administered, and we have not had one serious adverse event that is serious enough for us to report to the international health regulatory bodies like the WHO, because we have by law an obligation to do so. Around the world, more than 1 billion doses of first and second doses have been administered without many difficulties. So for the Guyanese people, for my sisters and brothers out there is absolutely no reason to be fearful of this vaccine. In fact, the thing you should be fearful of is COVID-19, that this vaccine will protect you against. Remember, this vaccine has not hurt anyone yet, and we don't expect they will.
Mm-hmm.
But COVID has already killed more than 280 Guyanese, our sisters and brothers. And around the world, more than 3.1 million people have died because of COVID. Not one has died because of these vaccines. So, to my sisters and brothers out there, don't be skeptical about these vaccines. They are among the safest medicine that anyone would ever have to take.
We have a number of vaccines currently available in Guyana, that is COVID-19 vaccines, that is. Can you just name some of them and give us a little bit of information as it relates to what we have right now? And why are there so many?
We have 3 vaccines in use in Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
We have, at the moment, we have the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was developed in the UK and mostly manufactured in India and in South Korea. We have the Sinopharm vaccine, which was developed and manufactured in China. And we have the Sputnik 5, which was developed and manufactured in Russia, but now also being manufactured in several European countries. Those are the 3 vaccines that we have. I would have to say at the moment that the dominant vaccine in Guyana is the Sputnik 5, because we have used up most of our first dose of Sinopharm. We just have a few more first doses. The second dose have been preserved. The AstraZeneca, we have used up most that we allocated for the first dose. Second dose amount have been put aside, so when people are ready, they will get it. So there are still a few AstraZeneca vaccine available for the first dose. Still a few Sinopharm available for the first dose.
Mm-hmm.
The vaccine that we have mostly now still available for the first dose is Sputnik 5. And you will recall that the first vaccine we received were AstraZeneca, and then we received Sinopharm, and now we are receiving the Sputnik 5. And that's the reason Sputnik 5 is still available. Um, if you ask the question, how many? Well, we have secured as a country enough vaccine for first and second dose for 261,000 persons. Of that 261,000, we have already received in stock enough for over 160,000 people. Um, the rest are being delivered in batches, and so we expect um, later this week another shipment that would come in with more Sputnik, because we procured 200,000 doses, first dose, and 200,000 second dose of Sputnik. So those are arriving. The government, so with that, and with COVAX, which delivers AstraZeneca to us, COVAX has already committed that sometime in May they will deliver some more. I don't know exactly how much, but with what COVAX will supply us and what we have paid for and secured, it's enough that by the end of July we can vaccinate first and second dose about 300,000 Guyanese people.
I had
The
asked.
question you ask is why so many? Because in addition to the three we are using in Guyana, and other Caribbean countries would have one or two or three of the very ones that Guyana use. You have in the US three being used that we don't have: Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. In Canada, in addition to these, they have the AstraZeneca. We also have in Europe AstraZeneca, Sputnik, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer. In the UK, it's mainly Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca, which is their dominant vaccine. And in many other countries, there's Sputnik, there is Sinopharm being utilized. And there are a few others that have been registered, licensed, and have emergency use authorizations. These vaccines began to be developed and manufactured soon after this virus emerged in late 2019. And so as soon as the genetic makeup was announced by China early in January 2020, scientists in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Russia, in China, and everywhere began to design vaccines. And it turned out that by August of last year, many of these countries already had a vaccine that they designed and were testing. And by December of last year, a few months ago, they had reached a stage where clinical trials were already completed, and these are the vaccines that had proven safe and effective. And that's why they're all available. Why not one vaccine for the whole world? Because different people were working at it and all came to fruition at about the same time. And secondly, and very important that people have to realize, there is no single vaccine that is available now that have the production capacity to meet the global demand. In fact, if we take all of the vaccines and combine their production capacity, they still cannot meet the immediate demand around the world. Complicating the issue is that the wealthy countries, like the North American and European countries, had pre-purchased the vaccine even before the vaccine had been fully developed. So that if you look at the contracts that countries have with the manufacturers, you will see that they had pre-purchased since March or April of last year, even before the vaccines had completed any kind of trials, because they all anticipated that you will have this problem of demand. And so that's the reason why so many different vaccines are circulating, because the developing countries now are scrunching around to find excess vaccines after the wealthy countries have procured theirs. We are left with getting whatever is left over. And so it's a massive achievement on the part of Guyana that we have been able to achieve, to procure as many as we have. And in fact, even with what we have, the president and the vice president are actively engaged in discussing procurement that will bring us in excess of 500,000 doses, that we could vaccinate 500,000 Guyanese before September or so. So it's a massive, massive achievement, and we should be proud of our country.
You would have given us quite a rundown there about how the vaccines are being procured and all of that. In terms of the uses of the vaccine, I know that it was specifically designed for COVID-19, but we understand that COVID-19 is it is developed off of like a flu-like virus. So there's some talk about the vaccine being able to protect against other types of bacteria and viruses. What can you say about that?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we don't need to be scientists as ordinary citizens. One of the things we always need to know is that vaccines are very, very specific. So the corona SARS-2, the COVID-19 vaccine, will only work against the COVID-19 virus. It will not work against other viruses. So you can't say use it against HIV, for example, or against malaria. It's a very specific thing. So you would have a corona SARS-2 vaccine, a malaria vaccine, if that ever happens. I hope it does. An HIV vaccine, if it ever happens. A polio vaccine, a measles vaccine, a mumps vaccine, etc. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Secondly, however, there are families of viruses, and corona, this COVID-19 virus, is part of a family of viruses that we are very familiar with. The common cold virus is a coronavirus. And there are 4 coronavirus that cause common cold. The influenza virus, you know, in America, you have to have flu vaccine every year.
Flu shots.
And that's because that virus, although it's the same family, changes enough over a year that the vaccine developed against it doesn't fully recognize it anymore, because it has such massive changes that it doesn't fully recognize it. So what they do is they anticipate the changes and they make a follow-up vaccine. The original vaccine might protect you some percentage of protection, because it will still recognize small parts of that vaccine. But that's because it's the same family, right? And I'm sure you're going to ask me about variants and so later. But that's the worry, right? That the COVID-19 vaccine might change so much that our present vaccine don't recognize it fully. And so even though it might provide some protection, it wouldn't provide as full protection as possible. So yes, the vaccines are very specific, but within a family, they might be able to recognize some parts and provide a small amount. So if there is a version of the COVID-19 that it changes, it becomes a variant, that this vaccine will still protect against it, but it may not protect 100%. So that's the as the simplest way I could say. But vaccines are very specific. It will only work against the virus that you develop it for. So COVID vaccine is COVID vaccine. It won't work against another bacteria or another virus, though it might help to defend your body if there is another family member that becomes a potent virus and attack you.
So we have a number of persons who've already taken the first dose of the vaccine. And most, if I think all of the vaccines that we have available in Guyana are taken in 2 doses. Could you explain to our listeners why this is important, and why this is so?
Okay. So as far as I know, all of the COVID-19 vaccine, with the exception of one, which is the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, you have to take 2 doses. And it's easy. There is a scientific basis, but it is easy for everybody to understand. So, see the table that is in front of you where you're sitting? If you try to move it by yourself across the room, you may have some difficulty, right? You may push a little bit. It will take you a while. But if your cameraman and others come and help you, you would move it across the table quickly. When you administer a vaccine, the body will develop antibodies against the virus. It takes time, however. It's not an instant thing. It takes time to make enough antibodies. And whereas initially the production level will be high, it begins to plateau. And the second dose is meant as a booster, to boost the body's capacity to produce the antibody. And in the trials, they discovered that the administration of a second dose helped to keep the steep incline, the production capacity increasing steeply up for a longer time, and therefore your body have enough antibodies to withstand the attack by a virus. And it's important for us to see this as a war. Our bodies are constantly bombarded by foreign entities, viruses and bacteria and other pathogens, protozoa, all kinds of things are in our environment. And therefore, our body have to learn to defend itself. The antibodies that we produce, our immune cells, they have this capacity to remember our enemies when they come into our body. Once attacked once, they remember what attacked them before. For some viruses and some bacteria, we remember a long time. So I am sure your family members, people in the studio there, people are listening to me right now, know something called chicken pox. So if you had chicken pox once, you know you're safe next time around, right? Because if you are near to somebody with chicken pox and you had chicken pox before, you don't get it back. That's because your body remember that chicken pox attack and develop antibodies against it. The problem with the immune system is that it doesn't always do a good job remembering the bacteria and the viruses that attack them. And so they're shorter lived. Um, and so we know that somebody who had COVID-19 have a level of resistance, but not strong enough. The vaccine, that's the job that the vaccine does. It trains our body to recognize COVID-19 if it attacks us in the future, and then to activate our defense system. There's something called lymphocytes in our body that then make antibodies that attach to the viruses, the COVID virus, and prevent them from attaching to our cells. And that's how we neutralize them. So the virus could come into your body, but they can't do anything because our antibodies recognize them right away, send a message to our lymphocytes that then come and attack the COVID-19. And so that's how the immune system works. It's a defense system. It has satellites that could do surveillance work and say, hey, we are under attack. The lymphocytes produce antibodies. It's like the surveillance system recognize it, send to the commanders, and the commanders send out the soldiers. That's how our immune system works. I hope I've simplified
Yes,
it now
yes, you
for
have.
everybody.
I'm sure people understand what you're saying. It's very graphic. You're describing it in a way that most people would understand. So yes, we'll go to like a short break so you can you can answer your call. I see you have a call coming in.
You noticed, right?
And
All right.
yeah,
Yes.
so I know
Okay,
you're on
thank you.
demand. So just let's go to a short break, and when we come
Okay.
back, we'll talk more about the importance of taking the vaccine.
Thank you.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burby's 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Health Matters here on Kaieteur Radio. We have been talking with Dr. Leslie Ramsay, former Minister of Health and current advisor to the Minister of Health, about the COVID-19 immunization campaign, and he was giving us quite a rundown on the importance of taking the vaccine, the types of vaccine available in Guyana, and why it's important that we just don't take one shot, but we go back for the second dose of the vaccine. Welcome back, Dr. Ramsay. So we spoke quite a bit earlier, and I understand when you're going in to get the vaccine, there's a certain amount of, I would say, a bit of questioning or questionnaire or something like that you have to go through before you take the vaccine. Could you give us a bit of what we should expect, or those who haven't taken it as yet?
For those of us who have not taken it, this is a very smooth process. It's not intrusive at all, other than when you get your injection. There is a checklist, and it's available if you want to check it out before you come. If you go on the website at health.gov.gy, you will see the checklist there. It's about 10 questions, and it's simple. Other than your name, date of birth, gender, an address and telephone number, because we need to follow up with you. It will ask you simple things like, do you have an allergy? Are you on any kind of medication right now? Do you have a chronic condition? Because we want to know what is your health status. So those are the simple things it asks. You can fill it out yourself, or for those who have some question about the answer, they can come. The nurses and the volunteers will help you fill it out. We do ask that persons don't drink alcohol before they come. And we do ask that after you have had your vaccination, you should wait at least 24 hours before you imbibe in alcohol. These are things that apply to any vaccine, any medicine. Once you fill that form up, we will also start filling out a blue book. Some of you have seen that blue book, this book here. We will have your names and when you get your vaccine, it will be listed in this book, what kind of vaccine, etc. So that when you come for your second dose, we know which one you receive, because we are not mixing and matching. If you had AstraZeneca first dose, you're getting AstraZeneca for the second dose. And so that's the process. You then get your vaccine, you're given this card to keep, the checklist we keep, because we are creating a register of the persons who have come, what they have had, etc. You are also given information about the vaccine that you took. So this is for Sputnik, for example, and you get to take it home, read it. You will see a number of telephone numbers. These telephone numbers are so that if you have any reaction to the vaccine, you can call us, and we will check out to see if it's anything unusual. Are you going to get side effects? Yes, I will wait until you ask me for that, but for now I will say yes, there are some side effects. Not everybody will get these side effects. Only some people will. Most people say it didn't feel any different. So that's the process that you will go through. The vaccination itself, the longest process. And Rehanna, I hope you had your vaccine. I noticed you're not answering me.
Not yet. So I have to go and get it. So, yeah.
Please do. So when you go, you will find out that the longest part of the process is the registration. The actual vaccination, when you get the jab, is about 30 seconds to 1 minute. And then we ask you to sit around and wait for 10, 15 minutes. Make sure that you are not reacting in any way. For most people, if they're going to have an adverse reaction, it will occur in those first few minutes, for most of them. And that's why we say, wait here until we are satisfied that you're not having any reaction, and you go. So how many people we have had to keep back from that process? None. We have had so far everybody feeling well and went home. And then after that, we will follow up. So for most people, we will call you to find out how you're doing. But we also ask people to call us. And so I hope he doesn't mind. I'm sure he doesn't mind. Take Mr. Ralph Ramkaran, for example. He had his vaccine. He called us during the night to tell us, I'm doing fine. There are many people who have called us to say, I'm doing great. That avoid us having to call. The president informed us that he's fine. The vice president informed us that he is fine. So that's the process. Taking you from before you come to after you leave. That's the process. It's simple. And unlike some of the bigger countries like the US or so, very few people have had to make a life, a meaningful life. So it's been a quick process. And so at the tent at the Ministry of Health, where hundreds of people come, nobody waits for more than an hour and a half. If there is nobody there when you come, like a site where the minister's office is, where usually there is nobody, the whole process would last for less than 30 minutes.
So it's quite a quick.
Quite a quick process, and we try to organize it. For example, as we are talking right now, there is a outreach site that will be today and tomorrow at the Texilla Medical School in Providence. And all the Providence businesses have been invited to send their employees. But the way we did it, we gave them slots so that they don't have to come make a line to do so. Right at the ministry, at the minister's secretariat, we make similar arrangement with small groups of people, employees, etc. So, for example, a Kaieteur News could call us and say, listen, we have 40 people, and we will give them a slot somewhere to come. They're larger employers, such as Banks DIH with hundreds of people. We will come to Banks DIH so that it's only their employees. But when there are smaller numbers, like 20, 25, 30, we try to go to one place and bring others there, but we slot it up in such a way that nobody has to come and make a line and wait a long, long time. And the registration process, like where there are hundreds of people, like we go to an outreach yesterday in Cane Grove, what we would have is 10, 12 volunteers going around to people and registering them. So instead of them coming and registering one by one, we register them, 10, 12, 20 at one time, so that it goes fast. Because the actual vaccination is then, in an hour we can finish 50, 60 people. um, with an actual vaccination.
Uh, we know that the vaccines are currently available to all adult persons, but is there any category of people that are exempt from taking it?
Yes, people that have suffered anaphylaxis shock from some things, we would
Meaning?
advise.
Meaning?
Well, people that suffer a severe allergy
Okay.
or something, an allergic reaction to things that might be in the vaccine. So if you have a history of not that ordinary allergy, an allergic reaction to something that put you in a shock, for example. For those people, we say it's a case by case study with your doctor, etc. So a doctor clearance will be necessary for such a person. But other than that, um, we people with certain autoimmune disease like Guillain-Barré syndrome, we would tend to say that that needs a doctor clearance. But for other things, people with heart disease, people with diabetes, people who have had an open heart surgery, all are people who can take the vaccine. Pregnant women could take the vaccine. A breastfeeding woman can take the vaccine. If there is someone who is positive for COVID-19 and is having symptoms at this time, we ask them to delay taking until their symptoms have dissipated. Once the symptoms have dissipated, they can take their COVID-19. And there was some confusion that if you had COVID before, you have to wait 6 months.
I've heard that.
And there is that requirement in some jurisdiction, and was one here when we started. And that's because the rationale is that since if you had it, you would have had some resistance. If you have a shortage of vaccine, give the person who have never had COVID so that they can have some defense, rather than the person who already have a level of defense. But where we don't have such a strong shortage, we are saying that even if you've had COVID before but you have no symptoms, that you can take your vaccine. So that, I have to repeat, because we face the number one question I have when I go into villages is, I had a drink this morning, can I take my vaccine? Or I have an event to go to later today. If I take this vaccine, could I have a drink? Those type of things, and I think I've given that answer already.
Yes. So there a number we spoke about the vaccine being administered in doses, and as we are on time, is there a specific timeline before, I'm sure there is, what's that timeline before you can take your second dose?
Okay, so for AstraZeneca, which is the one we started out with, the second dose we recommend is 12 weeks apart.
12 weeks?
12 weeks. So that guideline is the one being used in the United Kingdom, for example. There are countries that use 8 weeks, between 8 and 12 weeks for the second dose of AstraZeneca. What the clinical trials showed is that at 12 weeks, the booster is at maximal level. And that's why we have adopted the 12-week waiting period for the second dose. But as I said, some countries do 8 weeks instead of the 12 weeks. And so there is a little flexibility. For example, some people have called that they must leave the country before their 12 week. And we are saying to them on a case by case basis, you come and discuss it with us, and we will determine whether we'll allow you to have it earlier. But we are hoping that everyone wait for their 12 weeks for AstraZeneca. For Sinopharm and for Sputnik, it is 28 days. And so the clinical trial showed 21 to 28 days. We are using 28 days. But some countries are using 21 days for both Sinopharm and Sputnik. So there is a waiting period for that. What we have advised people is 28 days for Sputnik, 28 days for Sinopharm, and 12 weeks for AstraZeneca.
And there've been some in addition to what we're talking about in terms of how the doses are administered. There've been some talk about people not when you're completely vaccinated, what obtains next? How do you operate? And there's been some talk about being more lax, and some persons, the ministry enforcing that the guidelines are still in place and still should be adhered to. Can you speak a bit to that? And
Okay.
when we finish, we can talk about some of the rumors that is preventing persons from taking. I've heard some crazy stories.
Yeah. So, like we said before, vaccines train our body. Now, if you had to train somebody to be a radio show host, having them one time with you will not be enough. It takes time to train the body and for the body to have the production capacity. As I explained before, it takes weeks for the body to develop enough antibodies to protect you. And so what we are saying to people is, if you got your vaccine today, don't feel like you're a super person, that the virus can't attack you anymore, and give up on the public health measures like wearing your mask, etc. It is important that we continue, because it takes some time for your body to develop resistance. And so what if I finish my two doses and it's a couple weeks now? Can I now decide, hey, I am totally safe, I don't have to do this? The answer is still no, because we are part of a bigger group. And until everyone is vaccinated, none of us is safe. And that complicates issue for you and me right now, and for the public listening. Because whilst this vaccine will protect us, remember that viruses change every time they transmit. So we have to make sure that everybody within this period get their vaccine. If not, the virus will continue to transmit to other people. And during this transmission, if there is enough transmission, the virus can change sufficiently that the vaccine don't provide 100% protection anymore. So take the flu vaccine, for example, right? And that is why we want to make sure that everybody get their vaccine. Until that happens, even those of us who are vaccinated will have to continue to exercise caution, so that we don't have a virus that has changed enough come back and attack us.
So I touched on my next question a
Yeah.
bit. So
The
the
rumors.
rumors, you can just touch on that and tell people
Yes.
why it's important not to listen
And
to
I
these
think
stories.
I think
I
people
can't believe some of the
have
things I
read a
heard.
lot of what I've written, and I've talked about some of these. Vaccines, as I said at the beginning of this show, are safe, and they have protected us against many, many diseases. But there are stories that are circulating out there that are completely false. They're completely fake. And so you have stories like it has a microchip that the government will spy on you. Well, that is an absurd story. And the, for example, all of our political leaders have taken the vaccine. Think anybody will spy on them? Who are the most suspicious people in the world that some political opponent will be spying on me? But they all took the vaccine, showing how absurd this story. But it's 1 billion people around the world have taken this vaccine. Um, the second one is that it will make you impotent. I hear this mostly among the guys. Make them impotent. If there's one thing that make guys scared, talk about impotency. But fellas, don't worry about the thing. You are not going to become impotent. But if you want to live and enjoy your life and all the things that life offers you, including those things why you are afraid of impotency, then take the vaccine, because you ain't going to die of COVID and you'll get to enjoy all those things. Um, they say that women will become infertile. We have never seen vaccines doing these things. And people have taken it all over the world. And I'm happy that presently, if you look at the breakdown between men and women who have taken the vaccine, it's about equal. And I'm glad that people haven't really listened too much to those stories. There are things like you will turn into an animal. Well, I know you haven't taken it yet, Rehanna. I will keep reminding you.
Don't worry, soon.
Call me. So make sure you call me and let me know. But I didn't turn into any animal. Nobody, 100 and something thousand guys, none of them have turned into anything. They say that if you take it, you will die.
Oh, wow.
Well, none of us have died. They said it's a time bomb. And some have made it so ridiculous that it's going to be in a couple of 100 years, the bomb will explode. Well, God, you ain't going to live that long. So take your vaccine. Make sure at least you live 100 years. Because there's that one important thing to bear in mind, that if we take the vaccine, it will protect us 100% from going to the ICU. And for those of you who tell me how afraid of you are of vaccines, guess what? If you got to go to Jamaica tomorrow, you will run here to take the yellow fever vaccine to get on that plane. Because many countries require certain vaccine. And we don't know. Many countries are now talking that they might require COVID-19 vaccine for you to enter into that country. And the very people who are talking about all these fake stories right now, if a country like America, for example, said you will have to get it, you will forget all the fake stories. You will no longer be fearful. But this now is about another journey that you definitely don't want. You don't want the journey to the ICU and the further journey to the mortuary. So take your vaccine. It is good for you. It will save you. It will save your family from the trauma that so many people have gone through. Take your vaccine.
So we're coming out to the end of our program. there's quite a lot we're talking about here, and those are words of wisdom from the former Minister of Health and the advisor to the Minister of Health, current advisor. You heard it for yourself. The vaccine is important. You have to take it. There's some persons still skeptical. Minister, you would have touched on, not on the show right now, but you've spoken about having to collaborate with other groups, businesses, and so on to promote the vaccines. Do you see, or I know you called for the main political party to join that promotion. Could you tell us a bit about why there's so much silence according to what you have put across?
I see Rehanna continue to call me minister, but I'm glad I'm just
sorry.
advisor.
I call you. I'm sorry.
Everywhere. But yes, our government has gotten the vaccine for us. And let me give a shout out to all the nurses, the doctors, the public health workers who have been out there 7 days a week and working beyond the call of duty to provide this vaccine. We've had volunteers that have come out, and I want to give them a shout out. But there have been many partners. So whilst we might be good at administering the vaccine, we are not always so good at mobilizing people. Mm-hmm. There are other partners who are much better than us. Our political parties know how to mobilize people. Look at their rallies. Faith leaders, the pandits, the imams, the pastors know how to mobilize people. And so we have formed partnership with them to bring people together. I have been disappointed with some political leaders, and I want to urge them, there is still time, because as far as I know, all the political leaders, most of the MPs and their families have taken the vaccine. And we, as the people's representative, should speak out. Mm-hmm. We should say to people, take the vaccine. Let's make our country safe. Mm-hmm. Because if we can stand on the same platform in solidarity mm-hmm. on behalf of the citizens of this country, then we really don't deserve that position as the people's representative. So I'm calling on them to come out. I want to shout out also to my friend, to my brother, mm-hmm. respect to Reverend Messiah. I noticed he had a sermon yesterday calling on his congregation and the people, calling on other pastors. Because whilst I have been critical of some political leaders for being totally silent, and I am still critical, and I'm asking you to end your silence, I also have noticed that some pastors have been silent. Mm. This is the time to follow the lead of the Catholic bishop. This is the time to follow the lead of Reverend Messiah and those Assembly of God pastors that have come out. I'm asking all of us, all of our citizens who have a voice, to speak up and encourage your sisters and brothers, your neighbors, everyone around you to take this vaccine. Because as long as one of us haven't taken the vaccine, we are giving room mm-hmm. to the virus to come back to us in a different form, mm-hmm. A more potent form. So please, let's take this vaccine. Let's be our sisters and brothers keepers. We are one nation, and so let us defend our country, our families, and ourselves from COVID-19.
Mm. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for all of your information. Dr. Ramsay, I keep calling you Minister. I'm so sorry. So thank you for all of your information, and for those who are listening to the program, Thank you for listening, and I hope you adhere to what Dr. Ramsamy has said and what we've been promoting here this afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. We have come to, because we started late and we have other programmers waiting. We've come to the end of our time here on Kaieteur Radio for this week. Hope that you tuning next time so that we can have a conversation on health-related matters. Thank you so much again, and goodbye.